In Homestead, Florida, stands one of this generation's megalithic structures, built by a single man named Ed Leedskalnin. First in Florida City, he relocated the entire castle to Homestead, Florida, where he completed the work. Frequently compared to the pyramids at Giza, the heads of Easter Island, and Stonehenge, we look at Coral Castle. One giant question remains. How did he build this? The only first-hand accounts that we have of other people watching Ed work is only at night, where he has been said to sing to the stones that now make up what he called Rock Gate. Many of these single pieces of rock weigh over 1,000 tons, and the question remains, how did he do this? We explore this question among many other questions about the nature of our reality, hidden technology, mathematics, and the world energy grid. Come along with me on this journey as we look into just how Ed Leedskalnin created Coral Castle. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Yissel Missile Productions channel. My name is Steven Yissel, and today we are on part 24 of our Coral Castle Deep Dive series. I hope you're all doing well. Please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We also have memberships available for extra content on the channel. Today, we are continuing our read-through of Bruce L. Cathie's book, The Energy Grid. We have 2 chapters prepared for today, and we're getting close to the end of the book, but not to worry because we do have several more books to cover in this series. But we're getting close to the Ed Leedskalnin and Coral Castle content in this book. I hope you're all doing well. We'll get this audio started here. So I ask this every stream, but I'll ask it again here. How do you think Ed Leedskalnin built Coral Castle? From everything we've read so far, I believe he did use some form of harmonics, and magnetism was a major factor in a lot of his work as well. But it seems like nobody knows for sure exactly how he accomplished what he did. We keep digging and digging, trying to find answers. I think we're getting a better picture of how everything's coming together. Today, we'll be reading Chapter 21, Ooparts and Oopths. And Chapter 22, Spaceship or Survey Peg. And these are both fairly short chapters. It's roughly 12 pages total for today. Now the only thing, the way that I'm organizing all of these episodes or parts, the only thing that I'm really focused on now is making sure I get chapter titles in the titles of the video. And I'm going to retroactively go back in this series, as well as my other series that I've done, and add the chapter titles into the video titles. I think it's a little redundant to keep on using the same, putting the author's name in the title. So I'm doing it to give credit where credit's due. But I think once, like, I do the introduction of the book, then from there I could add more information in the title, because I'm limited to 100 characters here on YouTube for the titles. And some of them just go too long. But I think we're reading at a good pace. Next week we have 2 chapters, 23 and 24. But I think the week after, 2 weeks from now, we'll cover just chapter 25. Because chapter 26, which will be in 3 weeks, that's the chapter that covers Ed Leedskalnin. So I'm just trying to get this all presented in a digestible way. I know I've mentioned this several times before, but that's the way that I'm approaching this series. And it's developed quite a bit since I started. I wasn't using backgrounds. OBS was fairly new to me as far as weekly use. But I think I've grown quite a bit since I started this series. So I'm getting everything up on BitChute right now. And once I'm done with that, I'll start putting stuff up onto Rumble. Catch up there. But just as a heads up, I got 25 videos to put up on BitChute still. And I have to compress each and every one of these down to 2 gigabytes per upload for BitChute. So it's a little pain to do that. But I'm doing it. And once I get all of that done, I could focus more on doing shorts and reels, because I haven't really done any of those for this series, and I really want to. And I also want to get shorts and reels done for Bermuda Triangle. And the Chicago film industry deep dive, that's over with. It was 15 parts. But I think I could add a few more reels and shorts from all of those 15 parts. It just takes a lot of time to do all of this. I'm one person doing this here. But thankfully I have some good friends and viewers, watchers out there. Zenray, a member of this channel, will be sending me timestamps for the Let's Talk About It series. We did a 12-hour show, actually a 12-and-a-half-hour show on Sunday. Massive show. The file size on my computer is, it's pretty much the same size as all 15 parts of the Chicago film industry combined. With all the raws, all of the edited versions as well. That one show on Sunday takes up that much space. But thankfully, I do have a lot of backup hard drives. I'm getting those prepped for the Chicago film industry to finally be archived. And that was the first deep dive series that I did individual intros for. So, like, when I started this Coral Castle deep dive series, I didn't have an intro. And eventually, I worked around to getting a slideshow with music, but no voiceover. Now I have the voiceover. I am planning in the next few weeks to update the voiceover that's on this series. And best case scenario, I'll be able to re-upload everything. I won't take anything down, but I'd like to re-upload the beginning portions of this series with the current intro, since the first few don't have any. And I'm trying to get more eyes on this topic, people who are interested in geology and physics and the supernatural. I really want to get more attention onto it, get some traction going, and build the audience up. So I appreciate all of you here that are doing that, giving me likes and comments and subscribing. All of that helps out. It may not seem like a lot, but it helps with inserting me into the algorithms. So I really appreciate that. And I think this is information that's not really talked about on YouTube. If it is, it's very scarce and glossed over. We're going into all detail here. We have charts and maps and mathematical equations, first-hand accounts of scientists and physicists doing independent research with radio towers all over the world. This one, Bruce L. Cathie, he's doing a lot in New Zealand in the time of this book being published. And it's this is a combination of two different books. You can see on the top here. Harmonic 695 was one, and The Pulse of the Universe was another. So this, I think, is the definitive copy of these two topics, but he has many more books out there. And really, I'm taking it 1 week at a time here. I want to make sure that we're able to follow what we're reading. We have 29 chapters in this book, and we're on chapters 21 and 22, so we're almost finished. But after that, we'll be starting Anti-Gravity and the World Grid, which is another book that was mentioned in the original Coral Castle book that we started this series off with. So I can guarantee you that this series will cover the rest of this book, the Energy Grid, and the Anti-Gravity and the World Grid book as well. And from there, after that, it's unknown. But I do have a few ideas on how I could further look into all this information. Some of these books that I've picked up over the past month, I cannot read verbatim. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge with doing presentations. I'll just have to do outlines and take notes on the chapters and read them beforehand, and then come on here and give all of you a rundown of the information that I gathered. I think that's the best way to move forward with everything. But for the time being, we will be reading these books in their entirety, at least the rest of this Energy Grid book and the Anti-Gravity and the World Grid book. And these bring up a lot of different topics. I hope you guys are able to take the information that I'm presenting here and do your own further research. I think that's the best way for our knowledge to continue to grow. I'm always learning here when we're doing these things, and I like doing this live for all of you. So I really appreciate you guys being here for me live. I do have a live chat goal for today. And it's okay if we don't hit it, but I'd like to hit that today. We'll be able to get into 3 chapters instead of 2 if we hit our goal. And all I'm asking is for super chats of $2 or more. So if we get 5 super chats, if we get $10, I'll read another chapter. And, yep, this is all to help move the channel along. I've purchased a lot of books over the past month. Books that I'll be reading a year from now on this channel. It's just going to take a lot of time to go through all the material. But I'm here to present it to all of you. So, all I ask in return is first and foremost your attention. Second, your likes. Third, your comments, your subscriptions. And if you can, super chats and memberships. So I really appreciate all of you interacting here with me on this channel. And it fuels my passion to continue doing all of this. And we're seeing it through. We're seeing this through to the end. This is a deep dive. So we're going to continue going until we thoroughly exhaust this topic. And that's a good thing. I'd rather go over everything possible before calling it a day. So it's really appreciated that you're all here along on this journey with me. So chapter 21 is where we're starting today. Ooparts and Oopths. And that's page 197. For any of you that are interested in picking this book up, I highly recommend it. I'm not a paid endorser of this. This is just stuff that piqued my interest, and I'm here going over all this material with you. I have no sponsors or advertisers. I solely rely on you, the viewer, to help keep this channel moving forward. And really, I wouldn't have it any other way. I appreciate having people here that really are interested in what we're talking about here. So we have the photos in the slideshow going. These are my personal photos that I took in Homestead, Florida at Ed Leedskalnin's Coral Castle. And they'll be playing through on a loop as we read here. But sit back, enjoy the music, enjoy my soothing voice, and we shall get started. And say hi in the chat. I'll read through the chats as we move along here. I like keeping engaged with everyone. So, again, I thank you. I thank you all for being here. Man, I already went 20 minutes before reading anything. You see, I need to just get this all out of the way so that then we can just get right into this. But I don't talk about this too often. All the behind the scenes stuff. But let's get started. Chapter 21. Ooparts and Oopths. In 1961, archaeologists digging at the Palatine Hill, Rome, uncovered a previously unknown room. In a niche of this room, there was a painting, the subject of which was so startling that no explanation satisfactorily to all shades of belief has yet been offered. The painting. In the center ground stands what appears to be a modern spacecraft and a rocket, in fact. It stands on a launching pad, and from it runs cables or guys. In the background there is a tall wall, for all the world resembling a counterblast wall. Asks Ivan T. Sanderson, former British naval intelligence officer and a distinguished biologist, quote, "What was it that the Roman artist painted? Was it imagination? Reality? A forecast of the future?" End quote. A reproduction of the painting appears in his book, Uninvited Visitors, which I believe we wrote that down before, right? Well, this is a new part of the series, so I'm gonna just rewrite this. Uninvited Visitors. And that's spelled IVAN, capital T, and then SANDERSON. It deserves careful scrutiny. Why a painting of a rocket ship should appear on the wall of a hidden room dating from ancient times. How it could possibly be there, yet it is. Could be anyone's guess. Yet, curiously enough, there may be many more links between places of worship and space travel than one might first dare to think. This is not intended as an irreverent statement. There need be no offense taken by anything written in this chapter by readers of devout Christian or other beliefs. But we would like to present some facts and some theories that might tend to open up fascinating lines of investigation for serious research work. Consider, first of all, a typical place of worship in any country of the world today, and reflect that religious architecture has virtually followed a specific pattern from ages past. Mathematically speaking, architecture of the kind displayed by the great cathedrals of Europe, for example, would present the greatest possible challenge to the designers and the builders of the time, with the great naves, the towering structures, the superb arches. Chartres, dating from the 12th century, said by some to represent the finest flowering of religious architecture, is believed to have been designed on principles of Platonic mathematics, or Platonic mathematics, in which the harmonies of the entire universe were to be expressed. Gaze upon the faces of the finely sculptured kings and queens at Chartres. Unidentified and unknown representations, with expressions of supreme nobility, they look down upon the thousands of tourists who come each year. Look at the twin spires of the mighty cathedral, and mentally compare their shape and proportions with those of Apollo 12. Look at any Christian church with new eyes, and see the resemblance between the typical church spire and a typical rocket ship. Study pictures of Islamic mosques, Oriental pagodas, Buddhist temples, places of worship in India, Thailand, the Middle East. See how their towers soar upward towards where most people believe, quote, heaven, end quote, to be located, allowing for differences between Occident and Orient in the interpretation of detail. Attempt to get a mental X-ray picture of the basic tower structures and see how alike they really are beneath the superficial additions of various forms of buttresses, decorations of gargoyles, or carved reliefs. Moscow's Ivan the Great bell tower in the Kremlin, seen with newly opened eyes, is a 3-stage rocket topped with a semi-spherical capsule. The multi-stage rockets disguised as towers surrounding St. Sophia's, Constantinople, are suddenly obvious. The beautiful Gothic arches inside Cologne Cathedral repeat the rocket shape. Chinese pagodas, Indian temples and stupas, Armenian bell towers, and simply country churches anywhere in the Christian world all suddenly appear to have been built expressly and in imitation of spaceships. But granted the coincidence of shape, why? That is the question that Vyacheslav Zaitsev, that's spelled Z-A-I-T-S-E-V, philologist at the Belarusian Academy of Sciences, and that's spelled B-Y-E-L-O-R-R-U-S-S-I-A-N, has sought to answer in a number of works cosmic reminiscences in written relics of the past, the evolution of the universe and intelligent beings, plus magazine articles, condensations of some of these appearing from time to time in the magazine Sputnik. Hey Zen, good to see you here. Good to have you. I'm gonna take another note here. So if you wanted to look this up as well, this man's name is V-Y-A-C-H-E-S-L-A-V Z-A-I-T-S-E-V. And we have cosmic reminiscences in written relics of the past. That's one book. And the evolution of the universe and intelligent beings. That's the second book. But this field of research was not opened up by Zaitsev. He gives credit to Nikolai Reinin, a friend and pupil of Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, the Russian scientist who at the beginning of this century established principles for the building of space rockets. And again, this book is from the 1980s, so they're referring to the early 1900s. More than 40 years ago, Reinen was drawing attention to the correspondences in the myths of various peoples in regard to Earth visits by beings from other worlds. In 1959, another Russian scientist, Modest Agrest, considered that many events described in the Bible were in fact references to visits made to this planet by astronauts from other worlds. 3 years later, the American astrophysicist Carl Sagan published a similar hypothesis. So I'm going to take note of this other guy's name here. Nikolai Reinen. And Constantine. With a K. And his last name is spelled Tsilolky. Ovsky. Let us be clear about this. There is no scientific backing for the theory that has been put forward and which we now draw attention to, that the resemblance between religious architecture and machines designed for space travel is no mere coincidence. For a recently published version and updated account of evidence drawn from ancient rock inscriptions, biblical sources, and other writings and artifacts, see Erich von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. This Swiss archaeologist also puts forward the provocative theory that the origin of man, or the origins of man, are linked with visits to Earth by beings from other planets in ancient times. Returning to church architecture. Where did the archetype come from? The archetype that has been perpetuated with slight variation from ancient times up to the present day. And what are the reasons for the particular form of that archetype? When David ascended to heaven, the Apocrypha relates, the angel showed him the, quote, church image, end quote, that was to become the archetype of the Temple of Jerusalem. Returning to Earth, David built a model of this from memory and ordered his son Solomon to erect a house of the Lord along the same lines. So, it is believed the Temple of Jerusalem, built in the 10th century BC, came to be conceived. This is Zaitsev's question. It is, of course, a rhetorical one. Quote, perhaps the church image was the image of a spaceship. Perhaps some human being was induced by the astronauts to go aboard the celestial machine, where he saw the abode of God. Such an interpretation of this ancient Judaic legend about the origin of Solomon's temple would appear still more believable in the light of other texts, notably the Apocrypha. Oh, thank you, Zen. I appreciate that. Yeah, Zen's watching the 12-hour show from Sunday. It's a good one. I recommend everyone giving that a shot. I rewatched the first 30 minutes of that. and I was hooked. I didn't even realize a half hour went by. I'm going to try reading this up here a little bit. My eyes are getting a little strained tonight. See, when I'm not reading during deep dives, when I'm doing the Sunday show, it's a lot easier to run very long shows because I'm not looking at text. I have astigmatism in my left eye, so after a certain period of time, me reading, it becomes a little unbearable for me. So I apologize with that. Hindus believed their temples were built in the image of those of other worlds. Again, the design being revealed by a deity. The classical work, Ramayana, tells of a celestial chariot, a two-storied vehicle with, quote, many rooms and windows, end quote, which, quote, roared like a lion, end quote, at launching. Quote, issued a single-toned sound, end quote, and, quote, blazed like red flames, end quote, as it raced through the air until finally it looked like, quote, a comet in the sky, end quote. And this is taken from Zaitsev's article in Sputnik titled Temples and Spaceships in September of 1968. As Zaitsev points out, quote, Christian and Judaic, like Buddhist and Brahmanist architecture, go back to one source, a certain celestial temple, the look of which on earth was best imitated by domed churches, end quote. Supposing spaceships from other planets landed on Earth long ago, to primitive man would not the effect have been closely similar to that of cargo cults by modern aircraft landing in such places as New Guinea and New Britain in recent times? In those latter cases, the arrival of aircraft led to a worship of the creatures who arrived by the craft, and various religious practices were adopted as a means of trying to induce the aircraft and their magical cargoes to return. A word or two about the, quote, cargo cults, end quote, as anthropologists have dubbed them. Believed to have sprung up first in Fiji in the 1880s, the pattern has always been repeated. A prophet appears from among the people and proclaims the coming of salvation, possibly in the form of a ship or an aircraft loaded down with a host of goods, ranging from refrigerators to canned food. He orders certain rituals and even such activities as the building of a storehouse, and imitation landing strip, or a wharf. Basically, all such cults are probably primitive attempts to set in motion the necessary social changes required for coping with a situation of cultural conflict, the impinging of the modern and the, quote, civilized, end quote, upon the ancient and, quote, barbaric, end quote. All in the guise of a new religion. In ancient times, one might conjecture ships came to this planet from another world, or other worlds, bringing strange beings and strange but vastly useful goods. Perhaps the ships left, perhaps some remained, perhaps some remained in orbit, and some men of this planet, recognized for their superior intelligence or powers of leadership compared to others in their group, were ferried to space, to the space vehicles, and presented with gifts, and given instruction in simple technology, such as the invention of the wheel, irrigation canals, better techniques of working with stone or metal, and so on. Certainly there is a reason to believe that something of the sort may have happened, possibly some 15,000 years ago. For it was about that time that man began a massive breakthrough in handling himself and the environment. A fact that has never been satisfactorily explained. And that long ago, man suddenly, for no apparent reason, began to develop new techniques in such matters as splitting bones to create tools, although existing techniques had been in vogue for nearly 1 million years. Man in a puzzle to biologists, so tremendously different from his nearest relatives, the giant apes, if we are to accept the Darwinian theory of evolution. Among the primates, recent studies have shown man has 312 unique and exclusive characteristics that no other primate possesses. For some reason, he has evolved at a pace which, compared with that of the evolution of other creatures on this planet, can only be described as fantastically rapid. The evolutionary process is known to be very slow, imperceptible over the course of even hundreds of generations. Man's greatest evolutionary achievement was to develop a brain from which a capacity of 400 cubic centimeters, established from very early skulls of ape-like men, evolved to a capacity of 1,300 cc, cubic centimeters. In the space of 1 million years, a mere tick of the evolutionary clock. Yet it took some 30 million years, on the other hand, for primates to evolve a hand with an opposable thumb, which, according to the evolutionists, is what gave man his advantage in the race. Two American writers, Otto Binder and Max Flint, have recently put forward a theory postulating that the answer can only lie with a visit to this place, and this planet in ancient times, of other intelligence from another world, and a conscious effort on the part of the visitors to breed a race of men on Earth, either from motives of altruism or in a spirit of biological experimentation. If the spacemen were here, did they ever really leave? Did their presence give rise to the almost universal myth of racial origin, a descent by superior beings from, quote, the stars, unquote, or, quote, the sky, end quote? And did those feet in ancient times walk upon England's mountains green? The question of biological experiments we leave to the biologists. But dig into evidence for yourselves and start an avalanche. We suggest the following areas for fruitful investigation. Myths and legends. The ancient classical religious works from all countries inhabited since long, long ago, particularly India, China, Sumeria, Babylon, and Egypt. A fresh examination of, quote, secret, end quote, systems of knowledge, religious and scientific, including the works on alchemy, astronomy, the secret books of the Masonic orders, and the Rosicrucians, and the system taught in modern times by Gurdjieff, and that's spelled Gurdjieff, JIEFF. Religious architecture. The inexplicable presence of what Ivan Sanderson calls Ooparts, or out-of-place artifacts, and Oopths, or out-of-place things. So that's where we get the title of this chapter here. For the remainder of this chapter, let's have a look at some of the more outstanding, quote, out-of-place objects. In 1965, a Chinese archaeologist published a report which speculated that space beings may have visited this planet some 12,000 years ago. His principal items of evidence came from caves in the Bayan Karaula Mountains on the China-Tibet border. Here have been found some 700 stone discs covered with mysterious designs and writings. Each disc has a hole in the center, from which spirals a double groove out to the circumference. The caves are inhabited to this day by people of the Ham and Dropa tribes, frail people only some 4 feet in height. They defy ethnic classification. The discs have been dated to several thousand years ago. When finally deciphered, one of the hieroglyphs, possibly set down by an ancient member of the Ham tribe, reads, quote, "The Dropas came down from the clouds in their gliders. Our men, women, and children hid in the caves 10 times before the sunrise. When at last they understood the sign language of the Dropas, they realized that the newcomers had peaceful intentions." End quote. The discs were scraped free of adhering rock particles and sent to Moscow for study. Their scientists made 2 startling discoveries. The discs contained a large amount of cobalt and other metals, and they were found to vibrate in an odd rhythm, as though they carried an electric charge or were part of an electric circuit. Primitive art, cave drawings, clay figurines provide an abundance of material for the serious researcher into the possibility of space visitors having been here long ago. A rock picture found near the town of Fergana, Uzbekistan, is what looks like an astronaut. An artist in the Swiss Alps 4,000 years ago drew a picture of a man in a space helmet. The wall painting of a rocket ship in a niche of a secret room beneath an old Roman church has already been mentioned. A fresco in the Decani Monastery, Yugoslavia, depicts angels flying inside machines that closely resemble present-day aircraft. Something very like a spaceship is seen on a 17th century icon. The resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ and the Moscow Theological Academy as representing the house of the Lord. Japanese archaeologists have found at several excavations dogu, or clay figurines, of humanoids clad in peculiar spacesuits, with helmets entirely covering their heads. On the helmets are representations of something akin to slit-type glasses, breath filters, antennae, hearing aids, and even night sight devices. Rock pictures of spacemen have been found in the Sahara, in Australia, in Soviet Central Asia and in other parts of the Old and New Worlds. There are so many known drawings and carvings of this kind, in fact, that they have become known as, quote, the visiting cards of space travelers, end quote. When we come to look at Ooparts, as opposed to representations on rock walls and in figurines, the former are, quote, undeniably manufactured or artificial objects said to have been found inside solid, undisturbed rock strata, just as fossil animals and plants are found, end quote. And that might actually be part of the rapid change of matter. You could say mud can be turned into stone almost instantaneously. Certain chemical reactions have been proven to cause that. This is my commentary on this portion. Some of the more startling Ooparts that have come to light include flat-headed steel nails discovered deep in a sandstone quarry in Scotland, fine gold threads inside a large quarried block of limestone from northern England, a bell-shaped metallic vessel blasted from rock in Dorchester, England, the metal containing a large proportion of silver, and a variety of objects found inside lumps of coal, which would date them back to at least 12 million years ago, including a beautiful gold chain of intricate workmanship, a prize for a Mrs. Culp of Illinois, who found it when a lump of coal she was putting in her stove in 1891 broke into two. If I heard about that, it's been a while. As you know, I'm from Illinois. An object in the Salzburg Museum, Austria, is another mystery. A perfect cube of meteorite nickel iron, about 2 inches square, which is encircled by a precisely turned deep groove, understood to have been machined, found in a block of coal that would have been between 12 and 26 million years old. A German engineer engaged to construct sewers for the city of Baghdad discovered on a dusty shelf in the local museum among objects labeled as, quote, ritual objects, end quote, some, quote, stones, end quote, dating back to 1,000 years. Only one thing was known for certain about these, quote, stones, end quote. They came from the Sassanid period. The engineer added another piece of knowledge. The stones were, in fact, batteries. And Sassanid is spelled Sassanid. Zenre's saying to make the mud fossils that took boiling water. Oh, to make the mud fossils that took boiling water and salacious ooze from the silicon layer laying at the bottom of the ocean and salt water. I believe those are the 3 ingredients or chemicals. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I would imagine it takes some sort of intense heat. Because we're talking about like the restructuring of things. You have a gold chain inside of coal. And it wasn't discovered until it was split into two, so it was embedded in there. I do think a lot of this material is fairly new, even though we're told that it's old. And I would say these, like that gold chain from Illinois, could easily be embedded into coal by the coal just not being coal at the time when it was submerged in there. It could have been a more viscous liquid before it actually solidified, and the solidification process might have been instantaneous. We don't know for sure. Other out-of-place items include a remarkable model of the solar system dating from olden times and rediscovered from a seabed in which the movements of both planets and their satellites around the sun are accurately affected by the turning of a crank. The workmanship and materials preclude the construction of this incredible device in recent times. Where did the detailed astronomical knowledge come from? And where did the technology for the making of the model come from? And that's the end of chapter 21. And chapter 22 is really short. We got like 4 pages of that plus maps. So we'll finish that for today, and then that'll be it. We're doing good. We're about to hit an hour. So hopefully we can wrap this up in 30 minutes or so. So next we have chapter 22, Spaceship or Survey Peg. And this starts on page 204. In 1908, an explosion of catastrophic proportions in Tunguska left a surface scar, flattened 400 square miles of forest, and destroyed 80 million trees. Local inhabitants described an enormous ball of fire in the sky that looked like a comet. This was immediately before the explosion. Afterwards, scientists examined the crater, but no meteoric mass was found, only small bits of metal scattered around, and some reports hint at traces of metallic alloy. In recent years, Russian scientists have again investigated this spot and reported traces of radioactivity. Had nature gone crazy again? I don't think so. That UFO was one that didn't get away. That flattened 400 square miles of forest and destroyed 80 million trees. 80 million trees. That's incredibly difficult to just imagine what that looks like. Many years later, the following news item was released from Moscow. So this is an excerpt here. A 50-year-old mystery had caused major dissension among Russia's leading space scientists. They cannot agree about a theory that the, quote, Great Siberian Meteorite, end quote, which fell in the remote forests on June 30th, 1908, was, in fact, a spaceship from another planet. An expedition from Moscow is now working in the area, taking radiation measurements. 3 Soviet scientists, Professors Kurkarkin, Krenov, and Fezenkov, believe the object was probably a meteorite, but they prefer the cautious word phenomenon. Professors Alexander Kasentov and B. Lupinov insist that it must have been a rocket ship from Mars. A rocket or ship from Mars. Kasentov or Kanta, it's hard to pronounce this, hold on. Kasantsev has released some details of his spaceship theory after years of accumulating evidence. The known facts are that on that June day, inhabitants of Siberia's Genesaki area saw a gigantic ball of fire. Then a colossal explosion devastated nearly 400 square miles of forest. The shock waves were registered as far away as England. Scientists looking in vain for a crater or traces of a meteorite found that in the center of the blast area only the tops of the trees were snapped off. But the meteorite theory persisted until the explosion of the Hiroshima atomic bomb. Just after the war, Kasantsev pointed to the similarity between the Hiroshima devastation and that in Siberia, and suggested that the meteorite was an atomic explosion at a height of 1.5 miles. And I believe that's the end of that excerpt here. In 1951, Kasantsev and Lupinov developed the theory of an atomic power-propelled vehicle which exploded while trying to land. Expeditions to the area still fail to find any meteorite evidence, and the controversy has flared up again. Russian aerodynamics expert Manatskov has joined the ranks of the spaceship theorists. He declares the Siberian fireball was breaking as it approached the Earth, so that its final speed was about 2 kilometers or 1.24 miles a second, compared with a meteorite's usual speed of 30 to 60 kilometers or 18 to 37 miles per second. And this has a list of 2 things here. The Great Circle distance between point G and point H is equal to 347.2 nautical miles or minutes of arc. The harmonic reciprocal of this value is 288 or twice the speed of light. If we double the value, then we get 6,944 or 695. The speed of light reciprocal. And number 2, the Great Circle distance between point C and point H is equal to 411.635 nautical miles or minutes of arc. This value squared is equal to 16,944 or 1695. Later research proved this value to be associated with the gravity acceleration factors, or mass. And here in all bold and capital letters it says, mathematical key to diagram showing relationship of Tunguska explosion to UFO grid. And I'll read this out briefly, but I know you probably won't be able to follow this as clearly. But there's visuals here on the next page. So A, B, C, and D equal the polar section of UFO grid as published in Harmonic 33. Each of these points is a major aerial position of the grid system. E equals the pole of UFO grid. F equals north geographic pole. G equals intersection of grid longitude 90 degrees of Tunguska explosion, 60 degrees and 55.8 feet. H equals position of Tunguska explosion, latitude 60 degrees, 55.8 feet, longitude 101 degrees 57 feet east. C equals position of major aerial on longitude 90 degrees / 65 degrees and 8.88 feet. So next we have a map. It says a map tracking the movement of the space visitor. The pattern is more characteristic of a guided apparatus than of a natural celestial body. So a single slash shows its southerly trajectory and a double slash its easterly trajectory. So again, that's the template. And again, for reference, let's just look at these names here. And personally, I don't know where this is on a world map. I would have to look this up for further research on it. And then next we have diagram 17. It says diagram showing relationship of Tunguska explosion to polar section of UFO grid. And it says not to scale. So that's probably what all that information was we read on the bottom. So A, B, C, D, E, and F. That diamond is in where the UFO grid is at. And then the Tunguska explosion down there. So it actually it lines up with the diamond there. And this would be more for topographical map research and whatnot. Okay, we got a page and a half left. The secant of the angle of latitude of the explosion point, or 60 degrees and 55.8 feet, is equal to 2.0581, or the harmonic of 20,581, times 2 squared equals 16943, which is 1695 harmonic and 16944 in later work. An interesting point which emerges on the map is the actual path of the explosion object, usually referred to as a meteorite. If the phenomenon had been a normal one, that is a meteorite, as has been assumed by most scientists, the trajectory one would expect would have been a parabolic curve. But the object that blew a great surface scar at Tunguska exhibited no such regularity. It completely ignored all the ground rules laid down for the entry of objects into the Earth's atmosphere. It ignored the laws of physics completely. First of all, it approached from a southerly direction, and when it reached a latitude of about 58 degrees, it suddenly decided to alter course. It veered off to the east for 20 miles or so, whereupon it changed direction yet again, executing a sharp turn to west-northwest just before the impact, which wiped out in a flash millions of trees in the surrounding area forest. So it was making like 90-degree turns. That's what it sounds like it's saying here. Yeah, Zenray, it is in Russia. It is. That's why I showed the names of the places. But yeah, this is in 1908. Yeah, Tunguska. Wow. A natural object, whether a meteorite or anything else, and performing in accordance with known laws, could not possibly have carried out such a trajectory. That leaves only one conclusion to a logical mind. The object, whatever it was under the control of some sort of intelligence, and the point of impact was not a matter of chance. It was carefully preordained or pre-calculated. This leads me to conclude that what flew over Siberia that day long ago was either a spaceship which blasted something into the grid at that particular point, or else a controlled missile which was exploded in the area for some definite purpose. If the object was indeed a spaceship which crashed by misadventure, we can understand the situation up to a point. But if the object was a guided missile, another question immediately comes up. Why? Could it have been that as the system was to be reactivated, it was necessary to lay a marker from which all measurements would be taken? The Tunguska explosion in that case could have been caused by the layering of a colossal survey peg. From this point, any other point on the Earth's surface could be electronically calculated. There are scientists in Russia who say that the explosion near Tunguska in 1908 was atomic in origin, and I find myself in complete agreement. The big question is, how long will it be before the Russians determine just why the explosion occurred? News item from the Western Leader, Auckland, dated 17th of March of 1970. It reads as follows. UFO or question mark? A mysterious catastrophe took place in the Tunguska taiga, Russian, on 30th of June 1908, but it is only now that a plausible theory has been suggested to explain it, says the Novosti news agency. Albert Zolotov, an engineer physicist, has devoted many years to the study of news articles about the Tunguska meteorite and has studied the site of the catastrophe, collecting samples and taking photographs. Recently, Zolotov's book on the subject was published. Quote, "The Tunguska space body," end quote, writes the author. Quote, could not have been a comet, a swarm of particles or a cloud of space dust, nor could it have been an ordinary iron, stone, or ice meteorite, end quote. There was, he said, a nuclear explosion at an altitude of 3 to 4 miles over the taiga by a space body 160 to 230 feet long, traveling at 2,300 to 4,500 miles per hour. And with that is the end of chapter 22. So what do y'all think about that? We have something going on in 1908 in Russia, but it sure seems like these scientists want to say it was a rocket or a missile, but in 1908, what technology was really developed at that time? So next week we have chapters 23 and 24. Chapters 23 says, it talks about a New Zealand volcano. Very short chapter. And then chapter 24 is the Australian Stonehenge. So that ends up making up next week's readings. And that's going to be just about as long as today's. So if I don't talk for 20 minutes before we start reading next week, we can probably knock it out in an hour. Although I'm not too concerned about that. So we are getting close to the end of this book, but there's still a lot of good information to sort through before we get to the end here. And just for reference, we'll be starting on page 210 for next week, and this book ends at page 255. So again, thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate it. Those of you watching after the fact, please engage with the video. Please leave a like. Please comment. All of that helps this channel grow. We're in a very niche part of YouTube where we're talking about stuff that is challenged. Okay? I'll just say it that much. Zenray says maybe rods of God. And thanks, Steve. Good stuff. Thank you, Zenray. So I guess the question is, how does that relate to Coral Castle? Well, people have said that, or speculated that Ed was an alien. My father actually says 5'0" guy that built this entire place single-handedly and no one saw him do it. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I think what we could take away from this pair of chapters we read today, especially this last one we did, is that there's documented evidence of intelligent lines of impact. Like, you have to think of something like a meteorite being organic following a curve, and then you have intelligent ships that are moving on angles, because a meteorite wouldn't just make a 90-degree turn. Zenray says he's totally an alien. I bet he was trying to phone home. Yeah, I don't know. One of the big questions I have is, why did Ed relocate from Florida City to Homestead? And why did he bring all of the pieces that he carved over to Homestead with him? He could have just left them in Florida City, but he moved those objects over to Homestead, to the new location. So there is a military base within miles of Coral Castle, and they sit north of one of the major magnetic ley lines, one that runs into the Bermuda Triangle, which has a cluster of ley lines right in the center of the ocean there. I think that's all connected in some way or form. I think he knew something about, because he was doing that water witching thing with the you holding sticks and finding out where the natural water springs are. So there's always something to think about with that. I wish he would have documented more of what he knew, because here it's leaving us wondering how he did everything. And eventually, over time, if Coral Castle is not enclosed with a roof, then it will eventually succumb to the elements, because the coral rock is very brittle. And I think it was said that there's maybe 150 years left before it becomes unrecognizable. And there's already signs of weathering to the structure, but I think if they want to really preserve Coral Castle, they're going to have to do something. Put like greenhouse glass over the top of it. Keep it protected from the elements. But it did survive Hurricane Andrew. So that is one thing to point out. The entire surrounding area in Homestead was decimated, but Coral Castle remains standing. So whether you want to say it was by luck, by divine intervention, or just solid architecture and craftsmanship, Ed's castle remained through one of the most devastating hurricanes to have hit that area of Miami. So there's a lot of things to think about and speculate as the week goes on before we get back to reading some more. But this will all tie back together by chapter 26. The Diminutive Man of Mystery, which that talks all about Ed. It's only 6 pages, but it is about Ed and Coral Castle. It's in this book, and this was a book that was referenced in the very first book we started this series on, which I picked up from the gift shop at Coral Castle in Homestead. So that'll do it for today. Thank you for being here. Zenray, you're a champion. I really thank you. And yeah, just make sure Thursday, if you can, tune in. We'll be doing the Bermuda Triangle deep dive. And Friday is our members only Great Lakes Triangle series, which will eventually become public. But this is an incentive to get new paying members for the channel to help support what I'm doing here. And takes a lot of energy to read out loud like this and to be articulate. And so the Great Lakes Triangle Deep Dive series, that's a thank you to my members. But it will eventually be public for everyone. But if you want to see it first, instead of like a month or so from now, please consider becoming a member of the channel. And Sunday, make sure to check out Let's Talk About It, because I plan on doing another stream on Sunday. It should be a good one. But I'll leave you at that. Thank you again. Take care of yourselves. And until the next one, class dismissed.